future other subjects. Okay, so we'll continue in our discussion. So I think we stopped here, somewhere here. Okay, so to continue about Gothic architecture, so again, no, ang Gothic architecture, it originated in France. No? So sa France siya nagsugod and then it radiates to England and also niabot sad sa Spain and also nasad sa other areas such as in Italy. So there are two main Gothic architecture styles. So gibahin na siya duha, no? We have the French and we have the English. So nga na gid nga area, that part of Europe are those areas wherein you can see a lot of Gothic architecture examples. So again, no, asa gana siya. It's located in France and in England. So mo nang siyang gitawag og wait lang, I'm recording it. Okay, naka-record na, sorry. Okay. That is why gitawag siya og French style and the other one is English style. So we'll start first with French Gothic style. So in our previous discussion, we have four, but basing on the Visual Dictionary of Architecture, we have actually three. So which means the first two are actually combined, but they can be determined in terms of the year that they constructed those churches. So first we have the early French style, and also we have the high French style. So that is the first phase of the French Gothic style. The second one is the rayonnant, which is the mid or the middle phase. The third one is actually the late Gothic or the flamboyant style, which is the final phase. So again, no, we have the early French style and high French, which is the first phase. Second is the rayonnant style, which is the middle phase. And third, we have the late Gothic, or what we call the flamboyant style, which is the final phase. So let's dig deeper on what these styles means. Say meaning niya. So I've get these definitions from the Visual Dictionary of Architecture. So first, we have the early French style and high French style. So it says here, the first of the three phases of French Gothic architecture, characterized by the pointed arc and geometric tracery. So again, if I may read it again, the first of the three phases of French Gothic architecture, characterized by the pointed arc and geometric tracery. So, unsa may example na niya? So, as what we've discussed last meeting, I think na-show na nako ni siya nga picture. We have this example, the Church of Saint Denis. So, example na siya of a early French Gothic. So, again, no, balik ta sa definition. Pointed arc and geometric tracery. So, unsa man na siyang tracery? That tracery is actually the way they design their rose windows, the way they design their these windows right here. These windows right here and this one right here. So this early French Gothic, since siya may pinaka-first Gothic style, medyo it's not that elaborate, but actually it's really well ornamented. But if you compared it to other Gothic styles, siya ang mas less ornament. No? So if you notice, like if you would ask, sir, ngano ang usa naa siya'y tower? Actually, this one is the bell tower, and the other one is wala, no? So, is that a part of their design nga imbalance? Actually, they designed it in a way nga ingana siya before. Dili siya ingon nga design, no? But this one is the view of the Saint Denis Cathedral before. So they have this tower right here. And this one right here, this tower. but naitabo is nasunog. So kani siya na. This part right here is nasunog siya. So what they do, they tried to redesign it, ilatang i-reconstruct. This is their proposal. So naay duha ka similar tower, parehag forma, no? But they haven't implemented this one. Medyo, I think it's because of the budget, and medyo they've opted to just go with this one. This tower right here, and katong nasunog nga tower right here is nawala na. Okay? So if you try to check on the directions, this tower right here is south, gitawag na siya south tower. This tower right here is tawag na siya og north tower. So nga naman, it's because the churches, especially in early Christian, Byzantine, Romanesque, and also including the Gothic architecture, the churches are facing west. So ang ilang entrance is facing west, ang ilang altar is nasa east. So that means if mo ni siya ang plano sa church, which is usually the church plan is cruciform. If this is the east, this is west, this is north, and this is south. So if we have two towers right here, two towers, there is a may iyang entry portion. That means the tower on the right is what you call the south tower. The tower on the left is the north tower. So later on sa itong mga discussions, we'll call this one, this right side, as the south tower, this part right here as the north tower. So in this example again, ang north tower is nasunog. Nasunog siya, and then they tried to redesign and reconstruct it, but wala ni materialize. That is why the view of that church, the Saint Denis Church, is mura siya imbalance. There's a tower on one side and a blank on the other side. And if you notice, sa yung design na siya yung mga battlements, no? But design na siya. It's not the same with Romanesque na battlements are really for battle, where all you have the merlons and the crenelles. So again, no, mo na siya ang karaan good nga view of the Saint Denis Church, and this is what they would like to propose, pero wala ni materialize. So asa man kutob ang ilang church karon. So somewhere here, putol nga ri, and then there's a tower right here. And then putol ni diri dapit, diba? So if you draw the elevation of this church, the facade of this church, medyo tanang mo siya murag imbalance, murag magtuwang nga rin nga part. Diba? Okay, so next we have the High French Gothic. So for the High French Gothic, we have these examples right here. We have the Chartres Cathedral, which is for those who viewed the YouTube video, the YouTube link. Gidiscuss nga to the way they constructed the Chartres Cathedral. And then we have the Reims Cathedral, the Amiens Cathedral, and the Notre Dame Cathedral. So in terms of High French Gothic, these are the churches that were built after the early French Gothic. So what they did, or what you can see in these examples, are more intricate structures, highly ornamented, na mga ornaments, decorations. And if you see here, in this example, this is the Amiens Cathedral. It's quite balanced though, in terms of the bell tower, but they are not aligned. Like you notice here, if you will put a line right here, di siya aligned. Actually, there's a reason on that. There's a reason on this part right here, and later on we will learn what's the reason, or what's the unsay rason nila nga nung dili align ang ilahang kaninga church or the bell tower. So that's the another view No? So this is the Amiens Cathedral in France. So if you notice, in terms of the entrance way, they have the order, the tympanum, and so on and so forth. The way they've created their ornaments, their ornamentations, their openings are really, really well ornamented. And here, again, there's a difference in terms of height for the bell tower. So what's the reason behind? It's because this south tower right here, this one, this is the south tower. This was constructed during 1366. So during 1366, they've constructed this one. And before, ngara ra nakutob ang tower. Ngara ra. And during the 1406, they've extended this tower right here, this north tower, and they have plans to extend also this part right here. But actually, those plans didn't materialize. That is why nagpabilin nga taas ang isa, and the other one is quite lower. But actually, if you view it, it's quite balanced. Ang term na niya sa theory of architecture is asymmetrical balance. It's not symmetrical, directly symmetrical. Like if you have this middle axis here, or the center point, it's not the same. It's not the same on left and right, but actually they are balanced. Kitawag siya asymmetrical balance. So if you relate it to your theory of architecture, asymmetrical balance ang term na niya. Okay, so we have here another examples. So again, what are the examples? Other examples of High French Gothic. So we have the Chartres Cathedral, we have the Reims, we have the Amiens, and we have the Notre Dame Cathedral. So this one right here, this picture right here, is the Amiens Cathedral. And same here in the second picture, discussing the different levels of their bell tower, is also the Amiens Cathedral. So again, what's the reason? It's because the way they constructed, or the year they constructed the bell tower, is not the same. And they have plans to level it or make it higher, actually, because the goal of Gothic is to construct buildings way, way higher. Kanang murag abto na nila ang heavens. Kay they design their buildings for God. So mo na ilang reason why their buildings are quite tall, so that it will reach the heavens. So here are the other examples. So take a look on these examples and try to check on the what are the differences in these examples right here. So first, here we have this as the Amiens Cathedral. This one. This first one right here. Amiens Cathedral. This one here, we have the Reims Cathedral. And we have here, the third one is the Notre Dame Cathedral. Okay, so we have the Amiens, Reims, and we have the Notre Dame. So again, medyo same sila, o it sounds the same for me, but kindly note on the name. Some of these pictures, some of these cathedral examples will appear on the board exam. So first, we have the Amiens Cathedral. Second, we have the Reims Cathedral. And here we have the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, France. So make sure when you search, for example, if you would like to search more on this church right here, this Notre Dame Cathedral, kindly include the Paris, France, because Notre Dame, there are a lot of places that they have their own Notre Dame Cathedral. Notre Dame, actually, it is a French word. It means Our Lady, kaning Notre Dame. So if you have this name right here, the Notre Dame Cathedral, that means ano na siya, Our Lady of Blessed Virgin Mary Cathedral. So gitawag na siya Notre Dame in France. So here first we have this Amiens Cathedral. which is again high French Gothic. All of these three are high French Gothic. If you notice, they have the same style of entry point, diba? Pointed arches. They have this well ornamented tympanum. They have trumeau, this center portion. Here they have trumeau. Here, it has a tympanum, but actually the tympanum was replaced by a rose window here at the center. And this church right here, the Notre Dame Cathedral, it has a tympanum and trumeau, and then more or less the same size with the other entry points right here. So, dili lang usa ang ilang entry points, no? They have 3 entry points, but actually this one at the center is the main entry point of the church. So here at the center, rose window, and rose window. So again, rose window. This part right here, kaning portion, this portion right here, this one right here. Those are actually called gallery. So they have galleries. And then for the openings, they have pointed arches. Naka-pointed arch sila. So in this view of the picture, you cannot see the flying buttress, but sa likod, no, on the nave portion of the church, it is supported by flying buttress. So here you have the bell tower. So in this Amiens Cathedral, again, it's not the same in height, but here in these two other examples, the Reims Cathedral and the Notre Dame Cathedral, their bell towers are actually the same in terms of height. Okay, so I think you're very familiar with Notre Dame, no? The Notre Dame Cathedral is mo na siya katong nasunog year 2019. Actually, no? Medyo sad during that day actually for all architecture students, architects, tanan nga mga familiar or kanang kailaan nga building. It's a sad day because it's one of the best church actually in Europe, the Notre Dame Cathedral. So currently, ilan na siyang gi-reconstruct. So what they did first is they've collected all the stones. Ilan ang when they reconstruct mong good, di na para sa tuwa nga bahala na ug unsay mabuhat basta ma-reconstruct. What they do is every stone that they can collect is ilan ang i-mark. Piece by piece, they will mark that stone. And then, since this is a UNESCO heritage site, this kani siya nga church, the Notre Dame Cathedral, well documented na siya. So, before pa ni siya nasunog, they have all the copies of the plans. Actually, nasa like 3D scan ani nga building. It's because they have budget man because naka-UNESCO World Heritage na siya nga church. So, if there are incidents that would occur, especially kanina itabo niya nga nasunog, in terms of reconstruction, they can reconstruct it, they can rebuild it on unsa siya before. It's because they have a copy of the plans already. They have a copy of the 3D model, they have a copy of the 3D scanned model of the church. Ang medyo challenge na sila based on what I've read on the articles is the way they can reconstruct this spire right here. So here, kani siya nga portion na wala lang kayo nakita sa picture, but there's a spire right here. It's made of actually maple wood and oak tree. So medyo dugay ang paghimo and they want it to reconstruct the way or the same kind of wood na gigamit before. So what they did is they've collected this wood, but they need an ample time para ma-process ang wood para ano siya parang ang term na niya is pa-dry yun kanang you can when you cut a certain wood dili pa man siya magamit dayon diba because there's a moisture within the wood itself. So what they did is they need a lot of time to make it dry and pwede na magamit. there is a construction. So they've said nga around 2022 pwede na nila magamit ang katonga wood, so they can start to reconstruct the whole structure here. And hopefully, and I know that they can do it the same way or the same design what it is before. Okay, so we have other examples right here. Our other example is the Short Cathedral. So I think very familiar na ta sa kaning Short Cathedral, no? It's one of the cathedrals discussed in the YouTube video. So again, in viewing of the bell towers, the south and the north bell tower is not the same, diba? This one right here is designed with a steep spire right here. And then this one right here, he designed siya steep, but there are openings. And again, the same, we have 3 entry points going to the church. They have the pointed arc. Di lang kayo maklaro ang pagka-pointed, but these are pointed arc. They have the tympanum, pero this at the middle, wala na siya trumo. And this one right here, na siya yung mga orders. And still present ang rose window. So the reason why they don't have the same bell towers is because this one right here was constructed, this part right here, the north bell tower was constructed during the flamboyant Gothic style. So that means this style is naapa siya sa High French Gothic, but this one was added during the flamboyant Gothic. So add-on na lang ni siya nga tower right here. And this other side was actually constructed during the old High French Gothic, which is around 1144 to 1150. So again, no, mas early ni siya gibuhat, the old South Tower, and mas late na ni siya gibuhat ang North Tower. So if you go within this part of the structure, ang view na niya is ingana, no? So if you notice, this is the roof, the roofing part. And if you noticed here, it is now used steel. Gamit na siya og steel. So instead of wood, which is mo na siya yung reason sa mga early churches na masunog bitaw, especially katong sa Notre Dame, wala pa to nila fully na change o steel structure ang ilang roofing. So one of the areas nga fully na consumed good by fire is the roof, because the roof supports is made of wood. So this one right here, the Short Cathedral, ilan nang na-change into steel supports ang ilang roofing. So if you notice right here, this portion right here, the bottom part, these are the vaulting. So mo na siya ag mga rib vaulting. So sa taas na din ay walkway, no, for maintenance purposes, and siguro sa ganahan mo visit, no, wala dili lang kay tulod guro sa imong kauban guro na rin kay walay railing, di ba? If you notice, walay railing. So it's kind of scary to walk on this part, but actually kind of good also to view this part of the interior roof of the church. Okay, so far any questions? Let me know if you have questions. So here is a zoom-in photo of the North Tower and the South Tower. So if you notice here, the South Tower is less intricate compared to the North Tower. Why? It's because, again, no, the South Tower was built during the High Gothic, and the North Tower was built during the flamboyant style. So mas early ni siya na build. That means their knowledge, the way they construct their ornaments that time is on that level pa. So what they did is, through the years, they improve in terms of ornamenting their church. That is why they have a very, very different characteristics or views of this ornaments or decorations right here. So if you notice, no, grabe kay mga designs right here. So from the term flamboyant or flame, this styles right here, kani siya nga mga ornaments is curvilinear that would represent fire. So mo nang gitawag siya flamboyant or from the term flame. So again, no, this is the short cathedral. So it has a two separate towers, separate in terms of its design or look, no, lahi siya look. So going back again sa mga examples na to. So to have it remembered kaning nga mga styles at church, try lang to look on a certain peculiarity on how you can identify that church by looking at the facade. Kay again, there are times na during the board exam mo appear ni siya, no. I think one of the questions during our time is the Notre Dame Cathedral. So what they will do is they will show facades, no, mga facades sa mga churches during the Gothic and also siguro Romanesque na aside, but mostly Gothic ipakita nila. And try to distinguish what are the differences or peculiarity. So for example, here on the Notre Dame, open gallery compared sa Reims Cathedral, which is closed gallery. So again, this part right here is gallery. Gallery. G lang may butang, no? Gallery na. Gallery. Butang lang ako tanan. So again, no? Try to check on some differences between these cathedrals. So Notre Dame compared sa Reims, medyo similar in terms of form, similar in terms of size, but their difference or main difference is actually the gallery. Open gallery for the Notre Dame, closed gallery here for the Reims Cathedral. And also siguro pwede ninyo i-detailed na lang inyong description. Here you have the two openings on the bell towers. Per bell tower, it has two openings directly viewed from the facade. So here, it has an opening, but it's quite small and only one opening. And here on Amiens Cathedral, they have the same design of bell tower, but the north tower is higher compared to the south tower. So nga na siya, no, ang pag-differentiate ninyo when tagaan mo pictures during the board exam or siguro sa atong mga quizzes or future exams po. Ang medyo challenge lang during the board exam, I don't know why they do it like this, but they will present the pictures that is quite blurred and black and white na medyo ingana nagporma. No, so additional siguro no, additional difficulty level knowing or identifying the type of cathedral. So siguro pag photocopy nila, no, sa mga questionnaire, medyo ni darken na or ni blurred na. And siguro basig na yung mga ingana nga portion na, but actually wala na no, wala yung nag-ingani, but lang just to show if you could still identify it if naka-blurred ang mga pictures. Okay, so any questions so far? Okay, nasa question. So the next one, the second one is the Rayonnant style or the Rayonnant style. So the middle phase of French Gothic architecture from the end of the 13th century through the late of the 14th centuries, characterized by circular windows with radiating lines of tracery. Because rayonnant is actually means light. So rayonnant means light. So the way they do their tracery, the way they do their windows and the rose windows, radiating lines. The third one is the flamboyant style. So this is the final phase of French Gothic architecture from the late 14th to the middle of the 16th century, characterized by flame-like tracery. So from the term flamboyant or flame, so gitawag siya flame-like tracery, intricacy of detail and frequent complication of interior space. So if we compare lang, if we would compare the rose window of a rayonnant compared to a flamboyant style, it looks like this. This one on the left is the rayonnant style. This one on the other side, the right side, is a flamboyant style. So I think it's very evident man no, on the way they created their traceries. The tracery is actually these lines right here. It represents their design. At the same time, it holds the stained glass together. So actually, mo na siya ang kanang mga support sa ilang windows. Mo na siya ang tracery. This part right here. So in rayonnant tracery, ano lang, simple compared sa flamboyant, but actually it's quite intricate though. Naka-pointed arc, and then the way they've created it is kanisha quatrefoil. This one right here is actually called quatrefoil. Wait lang, where's my pen? If you have this part right here, the 1, 2, 3, 4, that's what you called quatrefoil. Foil. From the term quattro or four sides or four-sided, quatre, so quatrefoil. So this one, tawag na siya og tulo man na siya. So that means tawag siya trifoil. Trifoil. So these are the patterns used in traceries during the Gothic architecture. Trifoil na siya, no? Tri, which is 3, and then foil. So this one right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I forgot the term here, but still foil, and then use this quatre, tri, and then unsay 6, I think sexta or something. I'll research on that, but it's just the same way of naming this one. If it's four-sided, quattro. If it's three-sided, it's tri or 3, trifoil. But you can't see that, or you can't check that here on the flamboyant tracery, because the way they've created their traceries are flame-like manner. So kanang mga more nagsiga, no? Nag-fire the flame like here, no? These are the flame-like traceries. Actually, isa, no? Kaning sa center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's a 6 foil. It's a 6-sided foil. Another examples of flamboyant traceries are like this. No? So yung ano siya, the way they've created their ornaments, decorations are really, really intricate and really curvilinear, which it represents fire, especially here on the windows. You can see here in the windows. Grabe ka intricate ang paghimo nila sa ilahang tracery. So this church is actually the Most Holy Trinity in Loire Valley, France. So medyo gamay rin siya nga church compared to other churches. But if you look closely, siguro gamay rin siya nga church, but when we go here, we'll check the details here. Siguro ma-amaze ka sa mga details. Although nako'y copy sa interior ani nga church, it's quite good, but wala na ako na-include nga rin sa akong slides. But if you would like to know more on these churches, you can do so. Nara na sa internet, no? You could find those examples. Like for example here, no, the Most Holy Trinity, pwede na i-search ninyo, and then there are a lot of pictures that will show or that will appear. So again, flamboyant from the term itself, flame. So it represents flame-like traceries. So now we'll go to English. So again, no, unsa ang nasa French style? We have the early French, we have the high French, we have the rayonnant, and we have the flamboyant. Here in English, so nag-compete maning duha ka areas, the England and the France. Here in English, nasa sila ilahang kaugalingon nga mga styles. So we have the early English or the first phase. Number 2, we have the decorated style or the middle phase. And number 3, we have the perpendicular style or the final phase. So let's look at the definition of these styles. Now, for the early English, the first of the 3 phases of English Gothic architecture from the late 12th through the 13th centuries, characterized by the lancet window and plate tracery. So I have here examples. So this is the example of the early English Gothic period. So unsa man ni siya? This is the Wells Cathedral in England. So again, if we go back to the definition, characterized by the lancet window and plate tracery. So the lancet window is actually this one. Kani siya. Kanang pataas bitaw kayo. How would I draw this? Straight ni siya. Dapat straight na siya nga window, ha. And then, yan na. Lancet arc. So those are the lancet windows. So if you notice here, these are the lancet windows. This one. This one. So those are the lancet windows. Lancet. What's the other one? The other one is plate tracery. So looking at the zoom view of this facade, nga na siya, no? Ayan, tracery is just a rectangular, simple lang. Rectangular plates. Naka square, rectangular na tracery. They don't have those rayonnant, flamboyant style right here. But still, they use the quatrefoil, they use the pointed arches, they have tympanums, they have trumeau, they have these statues right here, and all the other ornaments, but in terms of having those traceries, those very intricate traceries, they differ a lot in terms of French versus Gothic style. But if you notice, sa mga churches in England or in English Gothic style, they have a very wide facade. So this one right here, dako kayog facade compared sa Reims, compared sa Amiens, compared sa Notre Dame. If you look at their facade, medyo, it's not really small, no, but it's quite small compared to the facade of the England or the English Gothic cathedrals. So here, they focused more on the widened frontage. Okay. Another example is the Salisbury, we have the Salisbury Cathedral. Wala na ako nabutang, no? But this is the Salisbury Cathedral, which is I also discussed this as one of the 8 beautiful churches in Europe. So what's the peculiar style or peculiar part of its plan is it has a dual or double transept. So transept 1 or the main transept, which is nangala ang mga choir. And then napag siya another transept, and then napag another choir nga to. So hilig guro ni sila manganta during I think zero ilang mass is di kanta na siguro na tanan, no? Because they have 2 transept and each transept na yung mga choir. May choir here. Choir right here. Choir right here. Another choir right here. And their altar is placed here, the center. So if you notice this one, these lines right here, kani mga nag-XX na lines, those are the moral reflected ceiling plan view of the rib vaulting. And if you noticed here, sa center, kaning nasulatan na ako red, that's an intricate part of their vaulting, which is gitawag siya og stellar vaulting. Later on, we will know what does it mean. So here in this in English Gothic styles or English Gothic church, they have this additional portion of their church. So aside from the nave, transept, bema, and all the basic parts of the church, they include another area wherein gitawag siya og cloister. Cloister. So what is a cloister? A cloister is a covered walk, open gallery, or open arcade running along the walls of buildings and forming a quadrangle or garth. The attachment of a cloister to a cathedral or church, commonly against a warm southern flank. Okay, so balik ko na itong basa, no? Kaya medyo taas kayo. So cloister is a covered walk, open gallery or open arcade running along the walls of buildings and forming a quadrangle or garth. The attachment of a cloister to a cathedral or church, commonly against a warm southern flank. So if you remember, during the early Christian architecture, they have those main entry, and then they have atrium, and then they have the ambulatory before ka moabot sa church. This one right here actually serves the same purpose, but it's not located in front of the church. It is located on the side of the church. Okay, so para makita nato ang forma, no? This is the aerial view of the Salisbury Church. So this is the cloister right here. Kani siya, mo ni siya ang cloister. So if we try to check in terms of direction, this one is west. This one is east. Okay, mo nila ang altar, di ba? This one here is their altar. So if west east siya, this one is north, and this one is south. So that south is actually that south flank. Flank ka ng, dili ka ng flank nga di mo kuyog sa team sa A site, ha. This flank right here is actually the breeze. The breeze that comes from the southwest portion, init na siya if directly mo igo sa church. It's the air is quite hot. And then this part right here actually blocks those warm breeze coming from the southwest. So actually this part right here, kaning cloister, it's actually also, aside from a covered walk or open gallery, before mag-start ang mass, some of the kanang church goers will stay right here. Or sila mag-chill before sila mo, or while waiting na magsugod ang mass. And also, additional space sa din siya to accommodate if there are daghan na kaayong mga manimba. It can also accommodate another set of church goers. And if you notice, there's a portion right here, this one, kaning circular. This is also another addition of the parts of the church during the English Gothic. So unsa may tawagan na niya? That is called a chapter house. So if na kay mga ka-chapter, diha mo mag-meet. So actually tinuod na siya, no? Chapter house or a chapter house, mura lang ilang tangtang running space, no? Is a building or room that is part of a cathedral, usually in English Gothic na siya, no, in England, monastery or collegiate church in which meetings are held. So if na namagod siya yung mga meetings, like mag-meeting ang mga priest, ang mga monks, or mga nuns, nga rin nila i-held sa chapter house. So it's actually a meeting place. And mostly detached, partly detached. It's not really fully detached, but partly detached from the church. Bali, gawas pa sila gamay sa church, and then musud sila aning chapter house or meeting place. So this is the facade of the Salisbury Church. So again, no? This is the lancet. And notice here, nasin sila yung mga gallery, but less intricate compared sa French Gothic. But still, they have the pointed arches here, the entry, the tympanum, the trumeau, the orders right here, and the entry point. But again, notice how they expand the overall frontage of their church. Mas dako silang frontage compared sa mga French Gothic churches. The second style in English Gothic is the decorated style. So this is the second of the three phases of English Gothic architecture from the late 13th to the late 14th century, characterized by rich tracery, elaborate ornamental vaulting, and refinement of stone cutting techniques. So in terms of styles, in terms of workmanship, medyo ni-improve na sila during the decorated style. So one of the examples, one of the well-known church, popular church actually in London is the kanisya. I think you're very familiar with this. No? Gasa gikasal si Kate and William. So that is the Westminster Abbey. So if you notice, very clean lines, the way they do it, very clean lines. No? Well ornamented but not overly ornamented. Well ornamented siya pero dili over ang pagka-ornament. They have balanced facade. No? They have gallery still. They have gallery here nga makita ang ilahang main roof of the nave of the church. And this part right here, they have small rose windows. But here, ang ilang pinakadako nga rose window is actually here on the kaninga part right here on the side entry or the entry along the transept area. So nangari ilahang pinakadako nga rose window. So actually this one right here, nani siya, this part right here was built with the kanang influenced by the Rayonant. The facade here, the facade right here is purely decorated style. But here, when they created this one, the architect that they commissioned has a great influence sa Rayonant. That is why makita nimo here na may pagka-French ang iyang style. It's not fully English Gothic cathedral ang Westminster Abbey, but there's a portion wherein there's a glimpse of Rayonant style right here. Okay, so an aerial view. So this one, mo na siya ang gitawag og chapter house. So this one, attached na siya, no, ang ilang chapter house. And here, you can notice that they use the flying buttress right here. So flying buttress. Actually, this part, flying buttress, but the other part, if we go back on our previous slides, this part right here, wala sila nag-flying buttress. This part, this portion. If you can see my laser pointer, this portion right here, they don't use flying buttress. What they did is, it's a normal buttress na nag-attach sila sa building, but on the other side, nato sila na-provide of flying buttress. So, siguro they've tried to check that this part of the church mo na siya ang nag-require of more support. Siguro they have ideas na siguro on the soil test or the soil capability. The next part right here, the third one, we have the perpendicular style. So perpendicular style is the final phase of English Gothic architecture, prevailing from the late 14th through the early 16th century, characterized by perpendicular tracery, fine intricate stonework, and elaborate fan vaults. So if you notice, before na-discuss na nato unsa ang fan vault, but here, ngari sa style, specifically for perpendicular style, diha nagamit og fan vault. So you cannot see fan vaults in decorated style, you cannot see fan vault in Rayonant, you cannot see fan vault in early English. You can see fan vault mostly in perpendicular style. So what's the other term for perpendicular style? Another term niya is the rectilinear style. Okay, so one of the best examples for this style, the perpendicular style, is this church. So kani siya nga church. It's the Gloucester Cathedral. So in terms of its facade, it's not the same intricate style compared sa flamboyant because mo man ni siya ang kakompete sa flamboyant. But what they did, mas intricate ang ilang interior. So the way they created their facade is just the usual Gothic style, and they've added more on the interior side and also on the main tower, the tower above the crossing. So unsa may naa sa ilang interior? Actually, their interior looks like this. So yung anak ka intricate ang ilang paghimo sa ilahang vault. So this vault right here is actually what you call stellar vault. Naka-stellar vault ni siya. As a fan vault is a different type, more different siya pagka-forma. What makes it stellar vault is because of this connecting lines right here. Later on, we will know what are these lines. Unsa ni siya i-term ano niya mga lines nga nag-connect. So here is the choir na part. This one is the view above the nave. So I think you're very familiar with ano niya nga church. It's because gigamit ni siya sa Harry Potter during the filming of the movie. So ug asa to sila, di ba? Kanang I think Hogwarts ni siya nga school. Pero actually kuan siya ilahang gamit ni siya during the filming ang Gloucester Church. So again, no? Gloucester Church or Gloucester Cathedral. So dali niyo ma-remember, di ba? Example of a perpendicular style, Gloucester, Harry Potter, yan yung nasa una. So again, it's one way of remembering a certain church. If na mo ma-associate, like aside from the facade, aside from the actual form, aside from the basic or perpendicular, what style it is, you could associate it if ever makita ninyo siya sa mga movies. Okay. Another view of the fan vault, this is actually the real fan vault. So, mo ni siya ang fan vault, which is in between the nave, this part right here, nave na siya, and this one is the side aisles. So, ilang side aisles is naka-fan vault. Ang ilahang main na nave, or the nave itself, is naka-stellar vault. Okay, so again, what's the name of this church? This is the Gloucester Cathedral in England. So that's all for the Gothic styles na French versus the English. But actually here in the Philippines, we have this Gothic church, which is gitawag na siya Neo-Gothic because it was constructed early 1900s. So I think you're very familiar with this church. It's in Manila. So in the Philippines, it is the only metal church, purely metal church. So the name of the church is San Sebastian Church in Manila. So dili na siya Gothic style, gitawag na siya Neo-Gothic. It's because the year it is constructed is around the 19th century or early 19th century, and it is made fully of steel. Now, they said nga ang steel nga gigamit ani niya is gi-order gikan sa France, and actually ang ilang gi-orderan is company ni Gustave Eiffel. So kana naghimo sa Eiffel Tower si Gustave Eiffel. Ang iyang negosyo manggod is steel, metal work. So during this time around, they ordered all their steel, their metal, imported na siya, yung mga parts sa France. So its interior looks like this. No. Murag mahug siya fan vault, but if napa na siya yung mga lines right here connecting all this boss here, pwede yun siya matawag o stellar vault. But actually, if this looks like this lang, rib vault na partly fan vault siya. Actually, it's, if sa una na during our board exam days, nga rin may mag-pray na mag-ampo kay doon man siya sa school ug asa i-held ang amo ang board exam. Doon na siya sa Quiapo, actually from Quiapo Church. malakaw ra ni siya, moagi ra kag medyo makulimlim na lugar, medyo kanang daghan kayong tawo nga medyo scary. And maabot na ka sa San Sebastian Church. Okay, so again, this is the San Sebastian Church in Manila. So the style is neo-Gothic. Okay, so we'll have a short break, an 8-minute break, and then we'll be back to discuss the visual dictionary of architecture. So discuss what are the specific na mga terms used in Gothic architecture nga naa sa Visual Dictionary of Architecture. Okay, so water break to sa snacks lang gamay, and then we'll be back at around 6:55. 6:55. Hello? Guys, question. If na ako i-upload somewhere in class materials, can you download it or delete? Hello?
Ma-download ra, sir.
Ma-download ra. Okay, sige. Na ako i-upload. It's a book nga akong nakitaan through a certain website. Graphic graphic history of architecture. So if ever mangita mo references for later on sa inyong mga sa inyong review, sa inyong other subjects, ganahan mo o inspired og mga history ba ang inyong mga pang-design, and especially sa atong mga skis, no? You could refer on that book, kindly browse through na yung mga nindot sila nga mga sketches. Naka-isometric pa gani ang uban. Okay, so for our skis, number 3, which is the Gothic architecture, says here, walang basahon balik ha. Find a Gothic church or cathedral that you admire the most in terms of its facade and overall design. So, usa lang ka buok. Pero if ganahan mo daghan, why not, di ba? So, at least one, na feel ninyo ganahan mo nga inyo siyang sketch. So, sketch the facade of the church or cathedral and label the parts. So, unsa nga parts ang i-label? So, again, no, we know the basic parts na of a church, katong mga trumo, tympanum, buttress, rose window. We have, bago na itong na-learn nga gallery. And at the same time, if mahuman mo sa elevation, kindly sketch also the sectional view. And again, kindly label the parts. And then submit the sketches in PDF form. So here in the graphic history of architecture, na yung mga examples nga rin nga naka-isometric. So if ever you would opt to draw this, sketch this isometric view, pwede na wala ang front elevation o ang usa. Bale, one drawing na lang, kay makita raman sa isometric view ang front o ang side. G ba? Libuga, sir. Na-G ra, guys. So again, no, based nga sa skis na to, the requirement is to sketch the front, the facade, and also the elevation, or if wala kay makita ng elevation and then na kay makuha nga section, inyong sketch ang section. So if ever, based sa kaning Gothic examples na to nga naa sa graphic history nga book nga akong gi-share, if namoy makita nga rin nga naka-isometric view, wala man siya perspective view, naka-isometric view man tanan, pwede rin na siya nga drawing instead of the front and elevation. Kuha ra? Nagets ra? Hopefully na kuha ra, no? I think kuha ra siguro, wa may ni any comments. Wala ra. Okay, sige. So to continue on our discussion, these are the terms, mga bag-o ni siya nga terms na wala pa nato na discuss before, that can be found in the Visual Dictionary of Architecture, and at the same time these terms are specific for Gothic architecture. Usually Gothic architecture na nagamit ani nga mga terms. So our first term is this one, no? Flechy. It's either pronounced flechy or flesh. It's a slender spire rising from the ridge of a roof, especially one above the crossing of a Gothic church. So before, ang atong term ato niya during the Romanesque is spire. But actually in Gothic architecture, naa siya specific term, gitawag siya og fleche. or flesh. So this one right here. So this one is the view katong wala pa nasunog ang Notre Dame, no. Mao na iyahang fleche, which is made of wood or timber. So again, based on my discussion, this is the part wherein currently they are drying the wood katong maple and oak tree na wood nga ilang ipang putol, and then they will reconstruct it on the way how it is constructed before. So fleche na siya. Actually, it's a spire, but the specific term is actually fleche for Gothic architecture. Okay. Another term we have here is finial. Okay, so finial. What is finial? Finial is a relatively small, usually foliated ornament terminating the peak of a spire or pinnacle. So this one right here, the whole thing is a pinnacle. If I may sketch it. This one right here, the whole thing is pinnacle. And this portion right here, the top portion, this one, kanang naka-triangle, that's the finial. So, siya ang nasa pinaka-topmost sa pinnacle. So, gitawag ni siya finial. And the whole thing is what you call pinnacle. So, unsay gamit sa pinnacle actually? The use of that pinnacle is to provide an additional weight to a certain column or a certain flying buttress. Pinnacle. Okay, so finial, and then this one is pinnacle. Another term we have is crocket. So what is a crocket? Is a projecting ornament, usually in the form of curved foliage, used especially in Gothic architecture to decorate the outer angles of pinnacles, spires, and gables. So asa man diha ang mga crocket? So actually this part right here, these are the crockets. Crockets. So those are the ornaments. Kanila mga crockets. Okay, so a projecting ornament usually in the form of curved foliage. So more siya ka ng mga dahon-dahon, no, nga ilahang mga gipang sculpt. So here, the term pinnacle. So a subordinate vertical structure terminating in a pyramid or spire, especially in Gothic architecture, to add weight to a buttress or pier. So here in this illustration, this one is the pinnacle. So unsay gamit sa pinnacle? Actually to add weight. Anong pabugatan pa man nila? It's because this part right here, this bolt, you're bolting your roof, it has a weight or load going sideways. So if wala na siyang pinnacle, no one would stop this force going sideways. So it's an added weight para kani siyang sideways na force, it would go directly down. So nga na naman na ang idea for building a structure. When you build a structure, any structure, from your roof, from your roof beams, from your slabs, floor slabs, columns, tanan nga mga force, ibutang na siya sa ground. And dapat ang imong ground have an equal force. I think na mo yung mga math subjects, mga engineering subjects. That ground must have an equal force to carry that load. So dapat ang computation na niya, the ground force and the force from your structure, ang computation na nag-equal niya 0. Okay, if dili na 0, if there's a number na ini-compute mo, if there's a number, there's something wrong with the structure. It's either it would not carry its own weight, or it dili ma-carry sa soil, mo tong nahitabo sa Leaning Tower of Pisa. Sa Leaning Tower of Pisa, na atoy portion nga ring apart nga weak ang soil, so that means dili na siya equilibrium. The force of your structure, the weight of the structure, di siya equal sa force sa makarry sa soil. Okay, so hopefully na-gets ra, no? And this one is the pinnacle. So mao ni siya iporma gid sa pinnacle, no? The whole thing is the pinnacle. And this part right here is the finial. So finial, The whole thing is the pinnacle. Okay, so unsa man nga church ang pinakadaghang pinnacles? So there's a certain church nga pinakadaghan og pinnacles. I tried to find og pila gyud ang exact number but wala ko'y makita sa internet, no. I think natos akong mga previous notes but I'll check if napa ba ko'y data. But the church with the most number of pinnacles is this church, the Milan Church in Italy. So I think you're very familiar with this one, the Milan Church. Kanang na mga dove nga rin na lupad-lupad sa front. This is the church wherein it has the most number of pinnacles. Obvious man sad siguro, di ba? 1, 2, 3. Sa facade pa lang daan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Facade pa lang na daan. And all of those pinnacles are well distributed all throughout the structure, all throughout the roof. And if you climb, pwede daw ang mga bisita sa church, pwede maka-climb sa roof. Chuyan, ano? Pwede ka maka-climb sa roof. Ingani ang view. No. So, nagi pa yung mga pinnacles nga to sa sulod, di ba? And this one right here, this one, mo ni siya ang finial. So, appeal lang statue sa taas na. Appeal lang siya sa finial. And the whole thing, the whole part right here is the pinnacle. So, mo na siya ang pinnacle. So, mo na siya, no? This one right here, the top most part of the facade, mo ni siya. And then naka nga to sa taas, ang imong view is this one. Mo ni siya. So notice the scale of the people right here walking on the roof, and notice kung unsa na sila kagamay in terms of the size of the church. Diba? Notice the scale of the people, how grandeur this church is. Diba? And hopefully makabisit ka nga to tanan. Naagta nga to. Okay. Another term we have is gargoyles. So it is a grotesquely carved figure of a human or animal, especially one with an open mouth that serves as a spout and projects from a gutter to throw rainwater clear of a building. So gargoyles. So kanina na magawas din nga tubig, kana na magawas nga tubig. So actually gargoyles are essential part sa ilang building, sa ilang structure, sa ilang church. It's because again, water is one of the enemy sa building. Muna siya yung number one na tong kontra if we construct a certain building. Why? In any part of our structure nga masudlan og tubig, there's a big percentage or tendency nga maguba na siya, mo-weaken, and then later on, dili na mo function og unsa na siya nga part sa imong building. So for example, here in Gothic architecture, most of their materials are stones, and the way they bind their stones are using mortars, kani siya, no? Kani mga darkened part nga rin. Those are mortars, and if kana siya nga mortar, if there's a certain water that seep through that mortar, eventually that would weaken the connection between the stones. And if dili mabantayan, that would make your building collapse. Kay these structures, wala man sila reinforcements. They don't have say Bisaya na, kabilya. They don't have kabilyada. What they did is big chunks of stone and then placed close to each other and then attached using a mortar. Okay, so ilalanggi artistically yung ani forma. Actually, the reason nga nganong bati ni siya now ang gargoyles is one of the reason is to scare the lowest people, kanang mga people nga dili mga pagan pa bitaw, no, dili sila Christian people, to scare them para di sila musod sa church, because before ang pag-join sa church, ang pag sulod nimo sa church is good for the members only, not the same with today's scenario nga sa kinsa pwede ka makasod, sa kinsa pwede makasod sa church. Okay, so another term which is very familiar to us, dagan na kayo nakabawa ni, flying buttress. It is an inclined bar of masonry carried on a segmental arc and transmitting an outward and downward thrust or force na siya, guys ha? Thrust or force from a roof or vault to a solid buttress that sit through its mass transforms the thrust into a vertical one. So, based nga rin, no, makita ninyo ang mga arrows. Those arrows are the thrust or the forces. So, ang imong roofing, na siya weight. Diba? So, ang weight sa roof, kinsa may mo dala. Usually, the walls right here. But that walls should be thick enough para makadala siya or maka-carry siya sa roof. And also at the same time, you're vaulting. So, this is your vaulting. So, this is your vaulting. This is your roof. So, although ang roof is made of timber na siyang na construction, but the vaulting is actually made of bricks and stones. So, ang vaulting is actually ang pinakabugat. So, since they make their structure way, way higher compared sa other types of architecture, dapat dako ni siya nga wall. Since they don't like thicker walls, because if thicker walls ka, dili ka kabutang og large windows, what they did is they transferred all the weight, all the thrust, all the forces, ilang gi-transfer nga to sa may flying buttress. And then, si flying buttress, mo na siya nag-transfer sa support going to the ground. It's actually, more siyang tao, no? If you have a big person right here, more siyang tao, no? Ana. Tawo na na. This another person right here supports the, murag mo siya another person supports this main person at the center. So murag na itulo ka tao and then these two persons on your sides supporting you. Murag bang imong gi-support ang nasa to nga. Okay, so mo na siya idea of including flying buttress sa ilang design. So how about today? Napa ba nagamit og mga flying buttress? Napa, di ba? And one of my favorite architects, si Santiago Calatrava, hilig kay siya mga flying buttress. So if you're familiar with this work, this is in Spain, Valencia, Spain. So katong mga kakita na og or nagsunod sa series nga Westworld, ngara nila gi-shoot ang season 3. I think season 3 man siguro to. Yeah, season 3 katong wako na sabtan, wala kay ko na sabtan sa season 3. Okay, so katong mga nakita og Westworld, makita ninyo ang interior aning building. It's a cultural center in Valencia, Spain. So look at the application of flying buttress, di ba? So dili lang di ay pang Gothic ang flying buttress. It could also be incorporated sa inyong mga designs. So I think kinsa may na-under no, I think wala na-under design ako ngayon. No? Akong gihatag nila nga plate is a museum. So pwede no, if they would like, they could incorporate flying buttress if they're inspired by Gothic architecture. So here, no, aside from this main structure, this part right here, naka-flying buttress siya. The support. Another term, we have the buttress pier. So actually, ano na siya, specific term. The part of a pier that rises to take the thrust of a flying buttress. So this is the portion right here. This one. That's what you call the buttress pier. Another term na naangari, no? We have the amortissement. So it's a sloping top on a buttress or projecting pier to shed rainwater. So kaning part na, kaning this portions right here na ilahang gi-slope. So again, ganong ilang gi-slope para diretso ra mo slide ang rainwater. Kaya again, no, water is one of the enemy sa imuhang building. Sa mga kontra nimo. So para diretso sa mo slide, they make this portion right here sloping, and the term used for that is amortissement. Another term we have is rib vault. I think very familiar, no? Rib vault. Naana siya sa atong midterm exam. So I think everyone is familiar na. So a vault supported by or decorated with arc diagonal ribs. So kani siya, no? Muna siya ang rib vault. So unsay difference sa rib vault o groin vault? Ang rib vault pointed arc ang gigamit. Ang groin vault is naka-semi-circular arc. Naiuban nga medyo maglibog sila ang answers during the midterm exam. Some of them wala ginigay answer, but ano lang, try to pwede maka mag-make og imong own definition if you don't kanang maglisod ka o remember sa definition from the book kay medyo grabe ka technical. You could create your own definition. So pointed arc and then extended on a certain direction, and it will create a rib vault. So yan ang mga definition nga feel nimo mas dali nimo masabtan as a student. That would be okay for me. Another type of vault is this one. So kani siya, no? Quadripartite vault. Nganong quadripartite? It has 1, 2, 3, 4. So from the term quad or quadripartite, quad, 4. So quadripartite na siya. Another is sexpartite vault. A rib vault divided into 6 compartments by 2 diagonal ribs and 3 transverse ribs. So if you notice, asa ang ika-6? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. O nagitawag siya o sexpartite vault. No? From the common nga rib vault, napagit sila gipang butang nga additional nga transverse ribs. Another term that we know already, fan vault. So a vault composed of a number of concave conoidal sections, usually 4 springing from the corners of the vaulting compartment, often decorated with ribs that radiate from the springing like the framework of the fan. So again, no? Fan vault, a vault composed of a number of concave conoidal sections, usually 4 springing from the corners of the vaulting compartment, often decorated with ribs that radiate from the springing like the framework of the fan. So this is the fan here, the fan vault. The fan vault. This one. Okay, so very familiar na tayo, no? Ng mga fan vault. Another here, we have the star vault or what we call stellar vault. So a vault having ribs, liarns, or tiercerons arranged in a star-shaped pattern na siya, no? Nakalimutan ang letter N. Also called stellar vault. Okay, so pendant. Pendant is a sculptured ornament suspended from a roof truss, vault, or ceiling. Also called drop. Kanina sa center, no? Muna siya gitawag og pendant. Another term niya is boss. Like, boss lang. Term niya, boss. Like, yes, boss. So, kanang nasa center, that's what you call boss. Another term that we have is the tierceron. So, the tierceron is a rib springing from a point of support on either side of the ogives or transverse ribs of a rib vault, also called the intermediate rib. So here, asa man ang tierceron? So tierceron is number 5. So actually this part right here are the tierceron. These are the transverse or the intermediate ribs. Kaya ang transverse rib is this one. Mo na siya, no? Kaning number 1. Mo na siya ang rib yun. And we have this diagonal rib, kaning darken at the center, number 2. Number 3, we have the transverse ridge rib. So, katong naas to nga. Number 4, we have the longitudinal ridge rib. So, katong nga, naas to nga, pero other direction. Number 5, katong mga mo connect. Those are the tercerons. And number 6, katong mga gagmay pagid nga mga connections, those are the liarns. And number 7, ang naas to nga is what you call dependent or what you call drop. Or again, another term niya is boss. Okay, so hopefully makuha rin ninyo ang mga terms. No? There are quite a lot of terms timanan, no? And medyo challenge siya actually during the board exam to remember all of this. So what we did is we kept on sketching. Sketch lang yun. Para later on ma-visualize nimo during sa board exam nga ako gitong gid-drawing. Da mo gito nga part. So siguro during since the board exam is multiple choice man tanan, even though you don't clearly know the answer of that question, but with the method of elimination, kana bitang basahon nimo each and every choices. Like for example, letter A, ang question niya kay kaning terceron on top, pero ang letter A nga choices nga to kay Amiens Cathedral. So syempre layo ra kayo sa question, di ba? So X na siya. Dili na siya mong answer. So that's what you call process of elimination, wherein tangtangon nimo ang feel nimo nga layo ra kayo nga answer. And then until you come such time nga nalay mga duha or na time gyud nga makuha nimo ang correct answer through the process of elimination. And hopefully you could try to do that and para ma-improve ang inyong method of answering multiple choice. Na magiuban nga inigbasa pa lang first sentence sa question, they would go directly to the answer and without knowing na dito yung mga specific portions sa question nga which are not more gana, di ba? So excited ka mo answer and then di na nimo makuha ang correct answer because wala nimo fully gibasa ang question. Okay, so another term we have here is formeret. So formeret is a rib against a wall parallel to the longitudinal axis of a rib bolt, also called wall rib. So asa man ang formeret? So formeret is actually this arc right here. So kani siya nga arc, this is the formeret. The other arc is actually the arc de bleu. So kani nga arc here is the arc de bleu. So this arc, the arc de bleu, is the arc along the nave. The formeret is against a wall, meaning nanay wall nga ri. Nanay wall dira. And that wall, after anang wall, ngadto na nag-support ang mga flying buttress. Okay, so a rib against a wall. So that wall, that arc is actually called arc formeret. So makita ninyo asa ang terceron. This is the terceron. This one here, kato mga ginagmay, those are the liarn. Dili makita but here under na siya pendant or boss or what you call drop. Okay, so those are the specific terms na makita ninyo sa Gothic architecture churches, especially sa mga specific na areas. So here, another picture that I can show. So we have here the tower. The designs here, kanang mga ornaments right here, which is forms like a foliage, including this one right here, including this one. Gitawag na siya og crocket. Finial is the upper portion of a pinnacle wherein na siya yung mga ornamentation. Arcade is the whole thing. Gable is the form of the roof, the triangular roof. This one is also called gable. Kanina ka triangular. Niche is actually kanang designed wherein they have this murag ni sulod, no? Murag ilahang gi-carved out. So, gitawag siya niche. Archivolt or order, this one at the entrance point. Tympanum, even though it is illustrated here as a rose window, but still, if that is above the door, it is called tympanum. And here we have the lintel. The lintel supports the tympanum. And then the center post right here is actually the trumeau. Okay, so pinaka-center, what you call the rose window. Okay, so that's the end for our discussion of Gothic architecture. And still, we have 10 minutes. Maybe we can start the Renaissance architecture because, again, we still have around 3 topics and we have 2 to 3 meetings na lang naibilin before mag-final exam. Okay, so and hopefully maka-catch up ta because I would really like to emphasize the modern architecture. And siguro I would send another supplementary discussions so that we could fully discuss the modern architecture. Any questions so far before tayo proceed sa other topic?
None so far, sir.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Yeah, mura nag-spaceship akong gipang drawing na. Hopefully nasabtan na rin nyo, although medyo lisod i-drawing using my mouse. Hopefully nasabtan na ang explanation. Okay. I'll open my another presentation. So again, no, katong mga nag-snacks ganina and wala ka dungog sa ako ang explanation about the skis number 3. Skis number 3 is you have to find a church or cathedral that you feel nga ganahan mo or nindot siya sketch and get a certain picture or facade na ang facade. So, inig-sketch niyo sa facade, kindly include or kindly label. Importante ang na-label para when you label it, you would know what are those parts specific for that certain church. Murag, it's the same. Wait lang, what's the question? For the churches in Gothic architecture, mostly French and English. Okay, if you will find another areas na Gothic architecture, mostly dili na siya Gothic, mostly na siya sa mga Gothic revival or the neo-Gothic. Okay, so again, find a certain church, Gothic church. Mostly ang mga Gothic churches nasa France and England, and get a copy of their facade and elevation, sketch it, and provide parts. Identify the parts. Wala lang definition only the parts. And if ever na mo'y makitaan nga sa akong gi-share nga book, which is the Graphic History of Architecture, and then based on that book naka perspective view or naka isometric view na siya, you can use that. So instead of elevation and front elevation and side elevation, you could use one drawing only, which is the isometric view. Okay, so usa na lang yung drawing on, pero naka-isometric view. And at the same time, include the labels and parts. I don't know if you've viewed the midterm grade already. Kinsa ni naka-view na mo sa inyong midterm grade?
Wala pa, sir.
Wala pa. So for those na naka-view sa midterm grade, when I compute it, actually one of the scores or grade that helps you guys is the skis. Dako siya help ang skis. All of your scores are well balanced now. It's because naa mo score from the skis. So I'll try to check on the deadline so that it will not fully kanang musagol sa inyong other deadlines, because I know if final days nasa yung mga other deadlines. So I'll check on it para balance ang inyong workload. Okay? So still have 5 minutes, and if you have questions, while I'm opening my another discussion, just let me know. Hello. So can you view now my presentation for the Renaissance architecture?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay, thank you. So now we'll have a new topic, which is we call this Renaissance architecture. So ang background nga photo is actually the St. Peter's Basilica. So this is the new kay namanggoy old St. Peter's Basilica which was constructed during the early Christian architecture and wala na to siya fully demolished, and this is the new one. And this St. Peter's Basilica where naangad to ang center of Christianity, naangad to ang Pope, is one of the highlight of the Renaissance architecture. Okay, so to start, what do you mean by Renaissance? So actually, the term Renaissance, it means rebirth. Unsa ba ilang gi-rebirth? Unsa ilang gibalik? No? So what they rebirth, ang ilang gibalik is the classical style. So Renaissance architecture means the rebirth of classical architecture. So what is classical architecture? Actually, classical architecture are those Greek and Roman architecture. And mostly during the Renaissance architecture, if we relate it to Gothic architecture, all of the artists or all of the architects or most of the architects during the Renaissance architecture doesn't like the style of Gothic architecture. During the Renaissance, ang Gothic dili pa na siya during the early part of Renaissance. The Gothic architecture is not yet called Gothic. It's called French work. And there's that one person, di siya ganahan sa Gothic architecture. So he coined the term Gothic, which is from the term Goth, which is or which are a barbaric tribe in Germany. And then he coined that term to identify the French work, which is that term, that Gothic term, na carried all throughout Europe and wala na nausab. Okay. So it is the architecture period. So this definition is from Visual Dictionary of Architecture. It is the architecture period between the early 15th and early 17th centuries in different regions of Europe. So mostly Europe area gapon siya, demonstrating a conscious revival and redevelopment of certain elements of ancient Greek and Roman thought and material culture. So revival, rebirth of the ancient Greek and Roman, because they think that mas better, all of the architects, artists during the Renaissance period, they think that nasubraan ang Gothic architecture and the best design is actually from the ancient Greek and the ancient Roman. And most of the mathematicians, astronomers are from this period, na kaning mga Renaissance period or the Renaissance architecture. So asa man siya nag-start? Renaissance architecture actually started in Italy, in Florence, Italy. So if you notice this one right here, this one, no? This one is the Florence Cathedral. Kani siya. Gitawag sana siya the Duomo. The Duomo is actually a true cathedral. Ang meaning anang Duomo is a true cathedral. And this one here, the Florence Cathedral, is one of the example or the best example of Renaissance architecture. For the influences, we'll not tackle the same before, the geography, climate, geology, because this time around, during the Renaissance architecture, they're not directly influenced by those influences. Kaya nga naman, they have those technologies now, na mga new styles, new types of construction that they've invented. So they're not fully influenced by those things. So unsa may ilang mga influence during the Renaissance architecture aside from those geology, climatic, and so on and so forth. So one, we have the warfare was changed by the invention of gunpowder. So during this time around, yung mga pusil, which brought about the need of a new building type. So actually, the jail, kanang prisuhan, no? Diha na nag-start sa Renaissance architecture. The designs of jail, prisons, diha na nag-start sa Renaissance architecture. Second, we have increased understanding of science and the arts, medicine, and astronomy, and human anatomy. So katong mga sila si Galileo Galilei, naa diri during sa Renaissance architecture. So artists attempted to understand the ancient world, its values, literary, artistic forms, and architectural forms. So what they studied is actually the Greek, the old Greek, and the Roman architecture. So with that, ilahang gigamit ang previous styles. So there are three phases in the Renaissance architecture. So ngayon lang mo stop na, I think it's time already. So the three phases are early Renaissance, or what we call the Quattrocento. The second one, we have the High Renaissance. And the third one, we have the Mannerism. So early Renaissance, so it's just the same thing sa Gothic, na gitawag early Gothic, early French, early English. Here, gitawag siya early Renaissance, kanang time na mo pa'y pag-start sa Renaissance architecture. Or the other term is Quattrocento, from the year itself, no? 1400 for Quattro, cento is the 100. So Quattrocento, mura bitawag ka ng Bisaya sa 400, or it's Spanish para na, Spanish term. Quattrocientos, di ba? So Quattrocento, another term for the early Renaissance, because this occurs around, no, circa 1400 to 1500. So the second one, we have the High Renaissance, circa 1500 to 1525. The third one, we have the Mannerism, circa 1520 to 1600. So we'll stop here. At least naka-discuss na tayo mga few slides. And then next meeting, we'll try to finish all the Renaissance architecture and revival architecture. Okay, so any questions so far?
None so far, sir.
Wait lang. Excuse me, sir. Makita sa pinnacle. Ay, nagunon ako. Akong ginoon ang pinnacle kay katong na ay finial, no? Pinnacle is the ano, di ba? Sorry, medyo na overwhelmed sa discussion about Gothic. Pinnacle is the website for the grades. Yeah, I think makita na. Because I already finalized ako nang gi-click ang finalized grade. For the Gothic is next meeting, last hour. Mga last 20 minutes. Magsugod sila mga 7:10 to 7:20. And ang quiz is multiple choice. Atong quiz is multiple choice. Okay? So, although nilapas na gamay, no, but I'll show this one. Give me 1 minute to show this one. Wala man ka may other class na guys. Napa mo yung laing klase? After this one? Oh, this is your last
Wala,
subject of the
sir.
evening. Okay, sige. Give me 1 minute lang to show this one. I think some of you know this na, how this works. But I'm just sharing it so that you could have your own additional info of this subject through the use of Visual Dictionary of Architecture. So this is the Visual Dictionary of Architecture, di ba? So when you open it, it's not the usual dictionary wherein arranged from A to Z. Naka-arrange siya A to Z, but ang A to Z niya is the main topic, which is this one, Volt. Sa Volt, nangad to ang discussion about the Liern, the stellar volt, the fan volt. But actually, the other Gothic na mga terms is nasa page 36 for the church. So, mga first few pages ni siya kay these terms are actually under church. But all the terms here below are not arranged alphabetically. So, if you would want to find a certain term, like the way nga kanang the usual way nga mo gamit sa atong dictionary, di ba? If nakay term, pangitawag nimo, find it on the index. Hari ka sa pinakalikod. Although di kay klaro, no? But isa rin ni ka page nga di klaro. But this one, ang index is naka A to Z na siya. So for example, sa may itong pangitaon, let's just say pinnacle. Sa pinnacle. Ang sa mga page ang pinnacle. PP. Pinnacle here. So it means nasa sa page 262. So siguro if you're using PDF viewer side, try lang if basin daig matsambahan 262 sa dire. So this page actually page 266. So balik ka kagamay. Then makita na nimo asa ang page 262, 263, 262. Makita nimo ang term. Okay. So that's the term pinnacle right there. So nga na paggamit ang Visual Dictionary of Architecture. And I think I've downloaded a new version, the second version. And then if ever makita na ko to, asa na ko to na save, I will share it also. Mas clearer version to siya compared ani niya. Okay, so thank you guys. Sorry for the extension of the time. 9 minutes ako nakuha sa inyong personal time. And have a good night. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.